Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your summer. My name is Rosanna. I'm head of support here at Foleon, and I've been at Foleon roughly about 2 years. And I'm super excited to host this webinar today. We're going to be talking about the personalization revolution, but of course, what does that mean? That's a good question, and we'll answer that a little bit later. But first of all, what's the goal here today? Our classroom is for sharing tips and insights by showing our customer examples. Of course, that's what we hope to achieve here as well today. We'll teach you something and inspire you to go home and create great content. But first, let's discover the amazing people that I'll be working with today. Let me just bring them up on the screen and I'll let them introduce themselves. So first we have Matt from Differentiated. He's been with Foleon for about 4 years. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello there. I'm Matt Neal, Director of Differentiated. We're a B2B marketing agency, and as I said, we've been working with Foleon now about 4 years.
Great, thanks, Matt. And next we have Joran, who will be talking about personalization at Foleon here today.
Yes, thank you, Rosanna, for introducing me. Yeah, so my name is Johan. I'm Product Education Manager here at Foleon. I manage the Help Center as well as in-app comms. And as Rosanna already mentioned, I will be talking about personalization.
Thanks, Joran. And last but not least, we have Anne. She'll be taking care of the questions today in the chat and monitoring that. So would you like to introduce yourself, Anne?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Anne. I'll be answering all your questions in the chat. So if you have any doubt or any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Great. Thanks, Anne. And now we'll just move on to the next slide. So just a little bit of practical information here. This webinar will take about 50 to 60 minutes. It's available on demand and you'll be receiving a link on your inbox afterwards. The goal is for you to get inspired by account-based marketing and personalization. So please ask any questions in the chat in the bottom right or at the top right of the screen that says I have a question field. And we'll have a Q&A at the end. But before we get started, I have a question for you. I'm just going to pull up the poll. And who in the audience has already experimented with account-based marketing? Let me know in that poll, and we'll get to it in a little bit. And while you go ahead and answer it, why personalization? Why do we call it a revolution? Well, in the 1930s, you used to get one newspaper, but now you're bombarded with information, with audiences scattered all over multiple platforms. And attention spans are also much shorter. Attention spans nowadays are an average of 8.25 seconds, which isn't a lot. If you want to stand out, you need to be relevant. The more relevant you are, the more you will sell. And this isn't only significant to the customer market, but also to B2B. 82% of buyers want personalized communication, and 57% view it as positive. And the B2C market hopped on this a long time ago, and it's about time the B2B market did that too. Consumers reward brands that get personalization right, with them being more likely to reshare, purchase, and repurchase brands and companies that get personalization. And as we can see in the poll, 74% of you have never used personalization before. So it's about B2B, it's about time B2B followed leads. And we've also experienced the effect of personalization at Foleon firsthand with our ebook, with personalization creating 71% readability more. So all these big numbers mean one thing: personalization is here to stay, and it's only going to get more accurate. And now let me bring on somebody that can help us and explain a little bit more about personalization. We've invited an expert, so I'm going to bring Matt back on the screen. Just give me 1 second. Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hi.
So Matt's going to be answering some of my questions, but also your questions. So if you have any, just let us know in the chat and we'll pick those up and ask them at the end. Matt, I'm just going to get right into it. Why do you think we call it the personalization revolution?
Well, I think personalization in its basic sense has actually been around a very long time. It's been an important part of marketing ever since marketing's really existed. But that's personalization just in its basic form. Over the last few years, there's been a really significant increase in these kind of deeper, more personalized types of strategies like account-based marketing. So what that means is that with those types of strategies, what personalization means becomes a slightly different thing. It does, of course, include the sort of recognition type personalization. So the Dear Matt type of content that helps people to understand that information is for them, which is very, very important. But it also is about customization as well. So it's about customizing the content to be relevant to the particular needs of the people that are consuming it. So it just creates different dynamics within that personalization meaning and much deeper levels of it. And that's just hugely popular now, basically.
And why do you think it's so popular at the moment? What do you think has happened for the reason behind it?
I think it's effective. I think that's the thing. I think the more relevant you can be, the more contextual you can be in the content and the information that you provide to somebody, the better results you get, the more response you're going to get from that. And with things like ABM, it's there are different kinds of measures. Really, you don't really measure based on leads. You measure on the impact on your reputation and the impact on your relationships that you have and the impact on your overall revenue. And the more personalized that you can be, the more likely you're going to affect those kinds of measures.
Yeah, indeed. And your agency specializes in ABM. Can you describe a little bit what ABM is?
Sure. So ABM is one of the things that we specialize in. We have done actually even as individuals prior to Differentiated existing. Essentially, it is about sort of dedicated and bespoke marketing campaigns. We focus. There are different kinds. Sorry, excuse me, of ABM. Let me roll back just very slightly. We focus on what we would consider to be purest ABM, which is what we call one-to-one ABM. So that is about creating bespoke or personalized and customized marketing campaigns between one brand and another brand, where your target audience would only likely be a small number, a handful of people within that target brand. More and more, we have a growing roster of what we'd consider one-to-few ABM campaigns. And that's about finding ways of scaling that similar one-to-one approach to be able to reach more organizations by thinking about ways of grouping those potential customers together by way of market or potential geography, grouping or clustering brands together such you can get an economy of scale in the way that you target them.
Yeah, thanks. And what level of personalization do you typically implement in the ABM campaign?
Well, as much as you feasibly can. The most personalized approach from an ABM perspective would be that both the content is what we would term as personalized and customized. So personalized in the sense that you've understood who the person is, you understand what their name is, what their role is, where they are based, what their responsibilities are, that kind of practical, almost firmographic type of data. But you then customize the content by changing the content to be, again, particularly relevant to that individual. If you can do both of those, that's very personalized. The closer you can get to that is what we're trying to achieve all the time with any form of ABM strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what tools or platforms do you use to manage personalized ABM campaigns?
Well, there's a few really, because there's a few things you need to think about. The first thing is about, I guess, the insight or the data that you would have that will enable you to personalize it. So again, we're a bit old-fashioned with that approach in that we believe the most valuable data is human-led data. So the first people that we go and speak to are the salespeople in our customers' organizations who perhaps know something about the people or the brands that we're going to be targeting and we get information from them. And then if we need more, we'll overlay with other types of data, like third-party intent data that gives us an indication of what their interest might be, or technographic data. So what platforms are they using? What might be a kind of subject matter interest for them. So that's kind of data and insight. In terms of content and content delivery, I guess there's a reason why I'm on a webinar with Foleon, but Foleon is a core platform for us. It really is. We use there is a traditional ABM strategy that works very well, which is very simple, which is to create a really relevant and resonant story, and to put that into something. Previously that might have been something like a PowerPoint or a PDF. And you would give that to a salesperson and say, now take that story into your customer and try and tell that story. We now are able to do that, but we're able to do that fully digitally using things like Foleon. We can still enable the sales team to take that story in, but what we can also do is we can use that as a fully digital platform that we can draw a wider audience, perhaps from that brand, into that content. So we use Foleon and that kind of content, that kind of full digital content delivery very heavily within ABM programs.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. That's why you're here as well, right? And what are some of the common challenges or pitfalls you've encountered when implementing personalized content strategies for B2B clients, and how did you overcome them?
Well, so first of all, I guess there's always a challenge about really if you're going to go more customized, really understanding what information you should be putting in front of an individual without actually speaking to that individual can be a challenge, right? You're having to use a whole bunch of data to then make a series of assumptions, I guess, on what information you think is the most relevant for them. So and sometimes it can be very difficult just to find out that type of information that enables you to customize something for somebody. Some people there's nothing available about them. It's very difficult to find out what it is that their interest might be. So again, to overcome that type of thing, you really just have to apply your best practice principles and personalize as much as possible. Maybe come out away from the brand or the individual a little bit and think about it more at a brand in a market type of context, because that's going to be relevant people. And what you shouldn't do is you shouldn't try to guess, really. I don't think that kind of stuff, because that can be really quite dangerous if you're putting information in front of people where you've just kind of made up the reason why. That's not helpful. Obviously, another big challenge typically is around data and quality data in that practical sense. So we work with a lot of very large global organizations. Their data sets sometimes can be really good, sometimes they can be really challenging. So the kind of the quality of the information that's in their CRM systems can make it sometimes difficult for us to, even at that very practical personalization level, be assured that we're doing things right. Again, if you have sort of, I guess, challenges or suspicions around that, you try to draw back from that and do your own best practice, do your own rigor around it to make sure that stuff is correct. Again, you shouldn't just hope for the best on that kind of stuff, because sending something out with somebody's name on it in the real practical personalization sense and getting their name wrong or spelling it wrong sets you off on the worst foot possible.
Yeah, you would definitely lose that person, indeed. And sorry, I got a bit lost.
That's okay.
And how do you? Sorry, are there any strategies or processes you've developed to bridge these gaps or to improve the accuracy of the targeting?
Well, again, a little bit like one of the previous answers, sort of drawing on some other tools, some other established platforms that you can have a level of faith in that are going to fill some of those gaps in terms of the data. That's the kind of, we'll start with what our customer knows, and if we find that is either not very much or there might be some challenges with the quality of that, we'll then start overlaying with other tools that we have worked hard to understand the quality of themselves. So much like our relationship with Foleon, when we were looking for a platform that does what Foleon does, we went through a process of assessing different platforms and establishing that Foleon was the one that met the needs that we wanted it to. We do the same with things like the data insights platforms. We don't necessarily get necessarily restricted to any single one of them, but we do go through a due diligence process to make sure that quality is everything, right? Of the content when it comes to, of the data and the content when it comes to personalization.
Yeah, like just making sure you double check everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Just do it yourself as well. Don't ever take something and just assume that is, you know, you need the assurance that data and that information is accurate.
Great. And have you been able to measure the difference between an ABM campaign and a non-targeted and linear approach?
Well, like I said, the way that you measure ABM versus the way that you measure, the things that you measure on an ABM program versus what you might measure on a non-targeted or a more kind of larger scale type of program are typically very different. On those kind of less targeted, wider scale programs, you're sort of looking for data, you're looking for leads, you're looking for, you know, data capture. With ABM, because the majority of ABM strategies are often focused on brands that are in some form connected to or customers in the first instance, you're looking to measure the impact on your relationships, you're looking to measure the impact on your reputation within that customer base and the revenue. So there isn't a direct like for like. However, the data that we do get through things like Foleon are critically important because, like I said, that old school way of doing it, you might have sent a PDF or a PowerPoint. You've got no understanding as to whether that content is resonating. And those kind of very normal statistics of time on pages and bounce rates and that kind of stuff is a very, very strong indicator as to whether your personalization and your customization is having an impact. If people aren't lingering on the content in any way, it's probably fair to say that you haven't got that stuff right or accurate. The only other thing I think is with ABM, typically you're able to follow the impacts through a sales cycle more clearly than you are on a more volume type of process. On a volume type of process, you might generate a whole bunch of marketing qualified leads, hand them over to sales, and then to understand what's happened to them can be very difficult to do. With ABM, because it is a marketing and a sales strategy and everyone needs to be remaining involved throughout the process, you typically can understand that tangible ROI number much more clearly. Whether it's much bigger, the volume is difficult to know, but it's definitely much more codified. We would argue it's much bigger. Typically, you're using ABM strategies on customers where your overall return is significantly higher than you would do on any kind of volume or anonymized type of marketing campaign.
Yeah, thanks for that. And how exactly do you measure this effectiveness?
Well, again, like I said, so understanding the kind of the usage data around content is important. Those kind of what we would term as vanity statistics, but vanity makes it sound unimportant. They're critically important because they help you understand whether your content is resonating. Aside from that data that we can see, what we're wholly reliant on is the information that our customer gives back to us. But again, because it's ABM, we're much more closely aligned to the marketing team and to the sales team. We get that feedback constantly as we're going through. So we measure it through a combination of that basic data, but also the actual feedback from the target organization. So where they're saying that content's exactly what we were after. This information is really what we need, but also the sales team turning around to us and saying that helped us land X million pounds worth of revenue. So there's a kind of a dialogue way of measuring the effectiveness of this type of activity.
Great. Yeah, I would say sales is definitely going to let you know if that's working. And
well,
yeah,
sometimes you have to negotiate with them, but they will get involved.
Indeed. And do you want to share some examples today with us?
Sure. Well, I have a brief case study
Perfect.
that I can talk you through.
Then I'll just pull that up and just let me know when to click through.
Sure.
Perfect.
So the first slide, I think there's a cover slide. Here we go. So this is a piece of work that we did that was a one-to-one ABM campaign for one of our customers, which is Vodafone, and it was targeting Royal Mail. And just before kind of explaining what we did, it's important to understand the context of the sort of situation, I guess, really. Royal Mail is the national mail service in the UK. But they realized that their business needed to change quite significantly because people don't send many letters anymore. They still send them at Christmas, of course, but beyond that, where the bigger business for organizations like this lies in parcels, because what everybody does do is they order things on Amazon or eBay or those types of organizations. So Royal Mail had stated that they needed to change their business and they needed to become a parcel-led business. And that meant a significant process and technology change for them. Vodafone, on the other hand, despite being a very large global organization, still often perceived by people to be a mobile phone provider. In fact, based on their investments and their growth, the huge investments in fixed line technologies, and they've been top right Gartner Magic Quadrant for IoT for many years. So they are, in fact, a technology innovator and absolutely the kind of organization that can help Royal Mail with this kind of stuff. But what we needed to do was kind of bring those two worlds together and tell that story effectively if they were going to have any chance of getting in and building relationships out and actually starting to uncover opportunities. So that was the kind of premise or the need behind this ABM piece of work. If you want to just move on to the next slide. Jumping straight to the point of what we did, we kept this as simple as possible for the purposes of this, really. The very first thing is we did all of that research to get that insight that we needed in order to understand how we would approach Royal Mail with the right kind of story, both customized, as in relevant to the brand, but also relevant to the people that we're targeting, and also personalized. And it's through this research part that we're understanding who we should actually target as well. So the actual individuals and how we match up those needs to the individuals. The conversation part was something that the sales team were asked to do. So the sales team did have some connection. And again, going to that very start point of exploiting the connections you do have, the sales team connected with Royal Mail and started to have conversations with the people that they did know and asked the questions of who should we be talking to? What are their needs? What are their challenges that they're facing? How might we start to answer that? So through conversation with the customer, we could also build out that kind of unique story, which we then placed in some bespoke digital content, which we'll show you an example of in a second, built in Foleon. We also had the opportunity to, I guess there's a sort of serendipity point, which often occurs within marketing. At the time that we were running this campaign, Vodafone were also developing a test technology called the Smart Label, which you can imagine would be very interesting for an organization like the Royal Mail. So we were able to do some executive bespoke mail to the organization. And then we also just kind of targeted the overall wider group of people that we didn't necessarily have the full connection with some highly targeted type of messaging through LinkedIn. So that bespoke digital content you can see is in front of you. It's a Foleon document that told the story we wanted to tell them, which is essentially built on how Vodafone can help Royal Mail transform their business in the direction they want to do through technology. If you move on just to the next slide, within that content, that visual you can see on the left is what we call an art of the possible, which we do a lot of, which is using visualization to demonstrate to the target audience how a customer of ours can help them by putting the technologies in context to the environments in which they work. So with Vodafone there, you can see it's this kind of two-dimensional type of graphic, but we might use an image, we might even use a video, using hotspots to be able to show them, well, this is the impact of the technologies in these spaces. And all of this content was personalized. A small amount of it was personalized at the document level. The majority of it was personalized at the distribution level. So having the sales teams take this into people and frame to them why they should be looking at this content. If you move on to the next slide, it's just got a visual here of the video mailer that we sent in around the smart label. And it's just also the important message, I guess, around this kind of stuff is, like we say, we use things like Foleon and digital content, probably the majority out of the most things that we do. However, there is still a place for the slightly more old school, straightforward mail type of or physical type of personalized approaches, because they can still be very impactful. As you'd imagine, we sent these to the Royal Mail using Royal Mail. It would have been slightly inappropriate for us to use any other kind of distribution service. But we were blending that kind of digital approach with the physical approach, with the traditional kind of direct type of approaches. And often when you do both, it can have a much more significant impact. If you just move on to the next slide, just kind of the headline of the results. The outcome of this was quite significant. So there is, if you jump straight to the last bullet point there was the tangible return on investment of an actual confirmed multi-million pound pipeline value that came out of the result, out of the activity, excuse me. But there are a whole series of these other things that occurred as well, which, like we say, when you're working on ABM, you're also looking at relationships and reputation and how you build on those. As we were doing this campaign, funnily enough, after a couple of weeks of deploying the activity, not a lot happened. And we were a bit concerned about that. What we found out was that around about the time that we were distributing content, many of the people were made redundant from Royal Mail. So that kind of threw things right out. We had to start again very quickly and establish new audiences. But from that, we knew the strategy was good. We approached it again. We had the new CEO ask for a meeting within a couple of weeks because he wanted some of the content. He was interested in the Smart Label project. We had other C-suite people referring us to other C-suite people. We met the innovation team. We didn't know anything about the innovation team. And so we have this huge kind of relationship growth as well as tangible return on investment. I've lost my slides. Does that mean I'm out of time?
No, not at all.
No, okay.
I was just showing your face as well.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So we have this huge growth in relationships. It significantly impacted the reputation that they had, particularly at a time of significant change within Royal Mail, and actually generated significant tangible monetary return for them as well. The overall outcome of that was, for us, of course, is obviously it was very successful. So we continue to work with Vodafone, delivering similar strategies into organisations like Royal Mail. We did, in fact, help Vodafone provide content for Royal Mail because they asked for it, because they kind of saw that approach and thought this could work really well for us internally. And it was this piece of work that won us an award for best use of ABM in B2B Marketing, which is a large sort of industry recognised award set in this country, probably the largest award set for B2B organisations in this company. If you just go on to the last slide there, it's just got a little icon of the award. But other big point for us really was that when we first approached this type of activity with Vodafone, the sales community that we were working with were quite sceptical, I guess, as was the target customer. Throughout the whole process, everybody got much more involved, got much more on board. We had the senior salesperson within Vodafone emailing us with ideas. In fact, one of them even went out and bought an old post office box because he thought maybe we could do something with that. We couldn't because they're made of lead and you can't get any signal out of them. So it's still sat in his garden. But the difference of, him at the beginning kind of going, I'm not really sure whether this is for us, to actually really coming up with these great ideas that we could potentially use within the strategy, which is also a really big success point for us.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. And we're just going to see if we have any questions from the audience. Let me just check that. Oh, we have no questions, so that was clearly very, very clear. Well, thanks so much for that, Matt. We're going to move on now to the next part of the webinar. We're going to bring on Joram, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about Foleon and personalization. And thanks again for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Rosanna. And I think you should be able to see my slides now. Is that correct? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and on my behalf also, I really want to thank Matt for his insights into account-based marketing, and especially differentiated work for brands such as Vodafone and Royal Mail. And speaking on behalf, I think from everyone here at Foleon, it's amazing to see that our customers and agency partners, they also work with these big global brands. But now, the webinar started the personalization revolution, right? So Matt has talked about ABM, and yeah, very nice to hear that they were successful in doing so and winning awards while doing it. But now let's have a look at how ABM actually relates to personalization, because ABM usually has that personalization component, as Matt also mentioned, but it's a much broader technique in marketing. And basically, it's tailoring your message to individual users based on their behavior and their preferences. So everything you can do to make your content more relevant to your audience, and even if that audience is large, so making sure that personalization can still be at scale. So these are just a few different ways of personalizing your message for your audience. So what we can see here on the slides is customized sales outreach, algorithm-driven content, account-based marketing, of course, personalized email campaigns. But what we have focused on here at Foleon, obviously because we're a content creation platform, right? So Foleon has focused on dynamic content, so allowing you to personalize Foleon docs so that they're highly relevant to your audience. And your audience, that can be a prospect, a customer, but also an employee. And that brings me to the personalization suite. And I'm going to briefly run you through the different personalization features that we have recently released. First up, text properties, then page conditions, then personalizing docs in batches by uploading a CSV, then the personalizer role, and last but not least, personalize with SSO. So first up, personalizing docs using text properties, which a lot of people would see as the most basic way to personalize a Foleon doc or content. For example, you can address a visitor personally on your cover page with a text property. And if I'm not mistaken, Rosanna, we have a little video to show you just how easy it is to generate that personalized URL.
Value, just in case any personalization data is missing. Let's insert the property. You'll now see the property in your text element, but it's not personalized just yet. Open the menu of your content editor and click Personalize. We're now in the preview. Let's say we want to address a woman named Sarah in our sales proposal. In the first name field, we'll enter the name Sarah. Next, click Generate URL. You've now generated a personalized doc URL that you can send to Sarah. Copy it to your clipboard and send the proposal to her in a personalized email, for example. That's it. Now let's hope that Sarah is impressed by the proposal.
Yes. So back to my slides. So what we just saw was personalizing docs using those text properties. And that was one by one, because you're creating one proposal and you're sending that out to Sarah in this case. But probably you want to personalize docs one to many. And I also heard Matt already mention one to few. But in this case, personalizing docs in batches by uploading a CSV allows you to personalize a lot of different docs at a time. So you can personalize content for hundreds of or even thousands of contexts in just a few minutes. So that's the next feature. Then next up is personalizing docs with page conditions. So imagine that you can show a page to a specific audience, by setting a page condition. For example, you have in your CRM that someone works in a marketing department. Well, then you want to show a page that is only applicable or relevant for people working in marketing. Well, then you show only that page. Or you have a pricing page and you have two different groups. You have United States prospects, and on the other hand, you have European prospects, and you only want to show the right pricing page to the right audience. Now, that's what you can do with page conditions. Next up, we have a dedicated personalizer role, and it's aptly called the personalizer. This gives non-creators, such as, for example, sales representatives, the ability to personalize content without allowing them to change the design. And they can actually distribute generalized, personalized Foleon docs without needing to change any design. So the personalizer role adds a lot of governance to the whole personalization process. Next up, last but not least, is personalized docs with SSO. So with the combination of personalization text properties and your single sign-on setup, you can make sure that the content is actually based on the visitor's identity. And this is especially useful if you're using Foleon for internal comms. So for example, when you have your colleagues login into a Foleon doc using SSO, and then automatically, based on their first name and which department they're working on, the content and the Foleon doc will automatically adapt. So that's the last one. Just to give you a bit of an overview, so we have three different kind of ways to understand the whole personalization suite. First up, what to personalize, text personalization. This mainly applies when you know who you're speaking to. Page conditions, showing in different pages based on what they're interested in. This usually applies to if you know what they're actually interested in. So that's good to understand. Then who's your audience? If it's a small audience, you can personalize one by one. If it's a large audience, you can personalize in batches using that CSV upload. And if it's an internal audience or people are logging in through SSO, you can use that SSO personalization feature. And then who can actually personalize? Well, the admin and designer roles, they can personalize, they can change the content and also send out those personalized URLs. The personalizer role can only personalize, adding that extra layer of governance. But now you've been hearing me talk about the features for a while, but now what can you actually do with these features? So what I'll do is I'll go over a few of the use cases that you can use personalization for. Because with Foleon, you can actually create so many use cases and content types, and you can ask yourself, where is personalization actually relevant? And you might have seen the content compass that are on the slides now before, but we're going to have a look at three potential use cases that you could start personalizing for. So first up, for the marketing department, we have an event brochure. For the sales department, we have sales proposal. And if you're working in human resources, an onboarding manual might just be the first thing to start with. So let's start. Customer marketing. Example number one, imagine that you're going to attend an event and you're handing out an event brochure. Well, a generic one might not really be that interesting, but imagine getting an event brochure with your name on it. At least I can speak for myself that I would be kind of impressed, and that would really pique my interest. And that goes for offline material, but also for online material. So a brochure that highlights specific event programs based on the attendees' interest, addressing those visitors by their name or which company they work at or which department they work in, that will not only grab their attention, but also make sure that each visitor feels engaged and valued. And hopefully that will lead to a more successful event. Next up, the sales proposal. And this is within the buyer enablement use case. So with personalized content, you will give each client the genuine attention that they deserve. And imagine that you know exactly how much time your prospect spent on their Foleon doc and which pages they looked at. So you can learn, okay, this is what they find interesting. This is something to bring up in my next call with them. Your sales team can actually personalize content without being able to edit the design. And this is that personalizer role that I was talking about. And then talking about the page conditions again, you have a sales proposal that is only relevant to a US audience, well, then you only show the US pricing page to them. So this kind of is a good summary of all the different features that we have. And then next up, and the last example, imagine that you start a new job and you get an onboarding manual that feels made just for you. We actually do this here at Foleon, and people are always very happily surprised. Oh, wow, this has my name on it. I already feel special. And even that just small little thing really can make someone's day, because they feel valued. With a simple CSV file as well, you could personalize for hundreds of employees at the same time. This is especially useful if you're working at a big enterprise level company. Also very interesting if you're sending out a newsletter and you're using, for example, that SSO integration. Automatically, everyone in your big, large enterprise logging in to Foleon and to your Foleon doc, they can have a personalized newsletter with on the front page, hi, my name Johan, and then only showing a specific page based on which department they are working in. So HR is, and especially employee comms, is a use case that anyone can get started with today. So if you're eager to use personalization in combination for human resources, there is a human resources guide that we will share in the chat. So I think that Anne, my colleague, will share that in the chat, and we'll also make sure to include that in the follow-up email. So we've just looked at 3 examples. So we've talked about customer marketing, we've talked about buyer enablement, we've talked about employee comms, but I can imagine that there's a lot of different other examples that you were thinking about during this webinar. What about brand marketing? Or what about recruitment and addressing someone personally and adapting the job description based on their experience? Or what about fundraising? Like, you name it. There's a lot of different possibilities. And if there's one main takeaway that I want you to take from this webinar, is that personalization is not just a feature, and really we believe in it at Foleon. And it can really elevate any use case or content type that you can think of. So if there's one main takeaway, I would say that's it. And I hope I got you just as excited about personalization as I am. And with that, I would like to pass it on back to Rosanna.
Thank you so much, Joran. And I think at this point, the only question left is who of you want to use personalization with Foleon? I'm going to pop a poll back on the screen and let us know. Not everybody has personalization in their account, so we would love to send you some information and be in contact. And with that comes the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it and you're inspired to go home and create great content and try out personalization. You'll still receive an email with the resources on this topic and this recording, so you can watch it again. And at the end, there'll be a survey so you can let us know what you thought. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
I think, sorry, Rosanna, sorry to go back in there. I saw in the chat that that Matt has an additional comment. Matt, if you would like to add something to that story.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to confirm your whole description there about the personalization, element plus the page conditions is what we talk about in terms of what personalization is about now. So personalization used to be just about the name, but by combining that personalized part with the name plus the customization of content, that's really powerful, and that's the stuff that we look to do within our space. That's the stuff that really helps with things like one to few ABM, where you have to sort of try to find ways of scaling stuff. I just thought that was worthwhile understanding, that connecting those 2 points, the page condition stuff with the naming, is really, really important and really powerful, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good to hear. And that's also the combination of all those features that makes it really interesting, because then you have the text properties, you have the personalization with the page conditions, but then doing that in batches. If you can feed that information from your CRM, feeding into that CSV upload to Foleon, and then doing that for hundreds of contacts, now that's really powerful. And as you also mentioned before during your presentation, is that then CRM hygiene becomes a big thing. And that's also something that we are very aware of at Foleon. So those are the kind of processes you need to fine tune when you're personalization at scale. But combining all of these features is so powerful, and very happy to see that you validate that.
Absolutely, and also that the personalizer role is an important thing to help with that hygiene, because if you're able to make people personalizers, they don't need to change the content, they know the name. Your CRM problems, if they exist, don't necessarily have to be problems whilst you're sorting them out. You can still get on and do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you really inspire me there, because basically what you want to extract from your CRM is you want to know who they are and what they're interested in. And if you know that, then there's so much power in creating content for them that is customized. So we hope that we can enable many customers to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we hope so. Sorry, I rushed a little bit there.
Okay.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing. And I hope to see everyone soon. Have a good day.
Thank you.